For half a decade, my heart beat in rhythm with Daniel Evans, a symphony of shared sunrises and whispered futures. Our wedding invitations were already embossed, the lace of my gown awaiting its moment. When fate swerved violently on a rain-slicked road, the accident stole nothing from him, but me. His mind held fast to every face, every name, except mine. I suspended our vows, becoming a ghost at his bedside, tracing the familiar lines of his face as if my touch could rewrite his memory. But one twilight, hidden behind a hospital curtain, I heard the truth unravel in a trembling phone call. His voice, raw with a love I'd never heard, confessed, "I remember everything, every sacred moment. I only pretended to forget her because I can't marry her. I won't surrender my right to care for you. To love you openly in my soul. You were always meant to be my bride." The words were shards of glass in my chest. I became an architect of silence. Weaving my exit from his life with invisible threads, I vanished before the wedding could stain our calendars, leaving only the echo of my absence. Yet as I fled, he shattered. They told me later he collapsed. Not from injury, but from loss. He spent his remaining years tracing shadows, chasing ghosts of what might have been, while I carried the weight of his lie like a tombstone against my heart. That day in the hospital, my tears fell not as drops but as pearls shattering on sterile tiles. Each prayer was a bargain with the divine. Let him live, and I will vanish. Let him breathe, and I will bear any silence. Then, a sound like hope, the hiss of the operating doors parting. A surgeon emerged, masked and weary, eyes soft with victory. "He's stable," she said. "Another half hour, and we'd have lost him." My knees dissolved. I crumpled onto a waiting bench as the air around us lightened. The Evans family and mine, united in a single exhale of relief. He would live, and I would become a memory he'd chosen to forget. Immediately after Daniel Evans was pushed out on the operating table, I rushed forward impatiently. Tears started falling again. Daniel Evans's face was covered in wounds and the gauze-wrapped injuries were still seeping blood. I bit my lip, unable to stop crying. A nurse beside him supported my weak body and comforted me. "Don't be too sad to survive such a major car accident is fortunate." I shook my head, unable to speak. How could I not be sad? We were about to have a joyous wedding, but then a sudden tragedy struck. What we had anticipated for so long ended in vain. Not to mention the wedding itself, almost just a tiny bit. Daniel Evans and I were almost separated forever. A joyous wedding was almost turned into a funeral. After grieving for a while, I suddenly realized now was not the time to be sad. William Evans and Margaret Evans, who wasn't feeling worse than I was. I wasn't a child anymore. There were things I needed to take responsibility for. The wedding was secondary. As long as he was alive, we could complete the ceremony any time. Right now, the most important thing was to take good care of Daniel Evans and hope he would get better soon. I took a deep breath, propped myself against the wall, and stood up. After mentally preparing myself outside the room, I wiped away my tears and opened the door to go inside. My family members, seeing me, all had eyes misty with tears. Margaret Evans came up and took my hand. "Ellie, I'm so sorry this happened to you. This sudden change with Daniel Evans. If you don't want to get married anymore, then don't." I bit my lip, suppressing the urge to cry, and shook my head. "It's okay, Aunt Margaret. We all need to believe in Daniel Evans. He'll definitely get better." Margaret Evans kept wiping away tears. I patted her shoulder and said to everyone, "It's getting late now. You all should go home first. I can handle the rest." No one refused. After giving me a few instructions, they left. I sat on the chair beside the baby, carefully held Daniel Evans's hand, and pressed it against my cheek. "Please get better soon. Daniel Evans, I'll wait for you." Daniel Evans woke up, but he had lost his memory. The doctor stood by the hospital bed, shaking his head. The patient hit his head during the car accident. At this point, traumatic amnesia is not ruled out. Amnesia. The moment those two words came out, it felt as if my world had collapsed. The doctor seemed to notice our worry and began to reassure us, "Don't worry too much for this type of amnesia. There's still a good chance of recovery. Just rest well with that." He left our room. I sat down beside Daniel Evans, wanting to take his hand, but he pulled it away. I looked at him in disbelief. But he spoke with disdain. "Miss, please keep your distance," I sighed and said with a smile, "It's okay. I'll help you remember everything little by little. It's also fine if you don't remember. We can start over." At my words, Daniel Evans's gaze seemed to soften for a moment. I choked back a sob. My family had already arrived at the hospital. Strangely, Daniel Evans recognized all of them, even my younger brother, whom he had only met twice. He remembered clearly. I gave a bitter smile. So he remembered everyone. He just forgot me, and only me. My eyes welled up with tears. I didn't want anyone else to see my sadness. As I turned my head to wipe away my tears, I met Daniel Evans's gaze. I forced an awkward smile at him. He paused, then evasively looked away. Why? His eyes clearly held affection when he looked at me, Yet he couldn't remember me. 3 eyes started meticulously caring for Daniel Evans at the hospital even with my early morning shifts. I would wake up 2 hours earlier to prepare a warm breakfast and take it to the hospital most of the time. Daniel Evans would still be sleeping. So I would quietly place the porridge on the bedside table and then leave. Then after work in the evening, I would go back to retrieve the food container and take it home, and so day after day. Daniel Evans visibly improved a great deal. He could even get out of bed now. And the wounds on his face had scabbed over. One evening, I was supposed to be off work, but the manager who had returned held me back. Ms. Hayes, since you're here, could you help me out? A client suddenly requested an urgent job. It's quite troublesome. I hesitated for a moment, but agreed. By the time I finished everything and left the office, it was already past midnight. I rode my scooter, wondering if I should just pick up the food container tomorrow. Then I suddenly remembered that my parents had taken the food container from my place back to their parents' place. Forget it, it was on my way anyway. I might as well go directly. And I could catch a glimpse of Daniel Evans. I parked my scooter in the hospital parking. Lodi slowly walked into the hospital. The inpatient wing was so quiet at night. I didn't dare take big steps, afraid of disturbing others. Daniel Evans was in a private room on one of the upper floors at that moment. Most people were asleep, but faintly, I heard a sound of crying as I got closer. I realized it was coming from Daniel Evans's room. Just as I was about to push the door open, I heard a familiar name, Chloe Miller. I miss you so much. My hand tightened on the doorknob and a pang of bitterness surged in my heart immediately. After Daniel Evans's voice sounded again, I remember everything. I just don't want to get married. I don't want to lose the legitimate right to take care of you in my heart. You should be the bride. My hand on the doorknob completely dropped. So this was the truth. So Daniel Evans hadn't lost his memory at all. So the amnesia was just a pretense to avoid marrying me. I turned decisively without shedding a single tear. Daniel Evans, you've been lying to me all along. Then let's see who can outsmart whom. For in front of Daniel Evans, I didn't change at all. I cared for him exactly as I had before, and he remained the same. He treated me like a hired caregiver that day. He was playing a game on his hospital. Beatty was sitting in a chair nearby peeling an apple for him. I spoke, feigning nonchalance. Daniel Evans, once you're better, shall we have the wedding again? Daniel Evans froze. The sound of being defeated came from his phone. He looked at me with no emotion. Eleanor Hayes, I don't even know you. There's no feeling between us, so how can we get married? My eyes welled up with tears as if they were about to fall in a flood of tears from injustice. I just want you to get better soon. Daniel Evans became irritable and waved his hand. Forget it. This isn't something I can control. Why do I remember everyone but you? I don't believe you don't know the reason at all. I froze. Are you saying I did something to hurt you? Daniel Evans hesitated. If it weren't for you. He stopped mid-sentence. I pressed him. What about me? He threw his hands up. Forget it. You should leave now. I'm tired and need to rest. I placed the peeled apple on a plate and instructed him. I prepared the fruit. Remember to eat it. It's good for your health. Daniel Evans said nothing, pulling the blanket over his head. I walked out of the room with tears in my eyes, and at the corner, I cleverly let a single tear fall once away from the room. I raised my hand to wipe away the tears from my eyes, my face expressionless. I got on my scooter and left the hospital. I thought about it and couldn't help but smile because I knew that after I left the room, a nurse would go. I wonder what she would say. She would say, "Patient, don't you feel anything at all? Ms. Hayes is so good to you. Even a stranger would develop some feelings while you've been hospitalized. She's been crying constantly every day. If she hadn't told us you two were getting married, we'd think she owed you millions. Even if I know you can't greet Miss Hayes with a smile, at least don't wear a scowl and make her leave in tears every time. Touch her conscience. Doesn't it ache? Or are you just faking it? Listen to that. Does that sound like something a nurse would say?" The truth was, she wasn't a nurse at all. She was just an actress I hired. So why did I know exactly what she would say? Could it be that I wrote the script for her? Daniel Evans, if you can't love me, then live with the guilt forever. 5. Daniel Evans's attitude towards me had improved quite a bit. It was probably thanks to yesterday's nurse who had worked. Today was the weekend, so I didn't have to go to the office at noon. I brought lunch to Daniel Evans at the office. I knocked on the door and smiled brightly at him. I had timed and angled it perfectly, sitting beside the bed. Sunlight streamed in through the window, landing on my hair. I was wearing a floral gauze dress with my hair down. I opened the food container and meticulously arranged one dish after another in front of Daniel Evans. "Try it, it's a new dish I learned to make." Daniel Evans glanced at me, then continued to eat, looking down after a couple of bites. He started playing with the spoon in his hand. He said, "Eleanor Hayes, if you're busy in the future, you don't have to come." I frowned, my eyes full of confusion. Why? He suddenly got agitated by my question. Why so many questions? "I'm just injured, not paralyzed." As he spoke, the leg propped up on the hospital bed was swinging back and forth. It was genuinely quite comical. I held back a laugh, lowering my head, my voice filled with disappointment. Okay, since he didn't want me close. It was time to involve his parents. I explained Daniel Evans as meaning to William Evans and Margaret Evans and asked them if they wanted to hire a caregiver. William Evans angrily threw a cup. That ungrateful son. Even a car accident couldn't fix his brain after all the worry we've had for him. Is this how he treats you? I waved my hand with a pitiable look in my eyes. Not really, maybe he's just worried I'd get too tired. Margaret Evans. My heart ached for her as she stroked my hand. Ellie, if you ask me, you've worked so hard during this time. Hiring a caregiver is a good idea. It will give you some rest. It's just Daniel Evans's approach that's wrong. You've truly been wronged. I shook my head. No, I haven't. William Evans sighed. Ellie, if you can't take it anymore, just leave. We won't blame you. I stood up from the couch, feigning agitation. How can I do that? Daniel Evans isn't well yet. I can't just abandon him. How could I do that? Daniel Evans hadn't suffered enough and I couldn't let him off the hook. Yet William Evans and Margaret Evans were incredibly touched by Methy. Said that even if I couldn't be their daughter-in-law, they would adopt me as their goddaughter. How could that be? If someone found out, he'd be furious. I secretly rejoiced. Sixth, the caregiver for Daniel Evans was one I had carefully selected. I told her all of Daniel Evans's preferences and dislikes, and I specifically instructed her to take good care of him within 2 days. Daniel Evans couldn't take it anymore. I was working overtime at the office when my phone screen kept flashing out of the corner of my eye. I caught sight of those 3 Daniel Evans. A smirk played on my lips, but I ignored it. It wasn't until 2 hours later when I finished work that I picked up my phone and hastily dialed the number. What's wrong, Daniel Evans? I was at work earlier, and my phone was on silent. Daniel Evans couldn't stand it for a second. He was on the verge of yelling. Eleanor Hayes, do you want to see what kind of caregiver you hired? She cooks everything I don't like and everything I tell her not to do. She insists on doing it as if she's doing it on purpose. She's taking my money to do this. Does she think I'm dead? I feigned surprise. What? I'm so sorry, I didn't know. He scoffed. What's the use of saying sorry? I lowered my gaze inside. Then I'll find you another caregiver. My family supports it. You'll just have to get used to it. They'll need time to learn your preferences. Daniel Evans fell silent, thinking about something. Suddenly, he gave in. Forget it, you should just take care of. May paused. All right, as long as it's not too much trouble for you. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up now. The second before I hung up, Daniel Evans suddenly spoke up. Wait, I secretly smiled. What is it? Daniel Evans coughed lightly. Could you bring me a bowl of noodles? I'm starving. With that, I quickly hung up the phone. I was afraid Daniel Evans might accidentally hear my laughter as I walked downstairs. I tapped open the TOP conversation in my messaging app. Thanks. Bestie, love you 7. Daniel Evans had been in the hospital for a while now. He stayed in his room all day, but as for me, I had become quite familiar with the doctors and nurses. Occasionally when we met in the hallway, we'd even exchange greetings. That day, I came to the hospital to deliver his meal as usual. Eleanor Hayes, someone called out to May. Turned around, but couldn't recognize who it was. Who are you? The man smiled and lightly tapped my shoulder. It's me, Marcus Song. Don't you recognize me? Marcus Song. I searched my memory and finally got a faint impression he was called Marcus Song because he had dark skin. Marcus Song. The man laughed heartily. Finally, you remembered me. You haven't seen me in so long and your memory has really gotten worse. I teased him. You might be right, but you've gotten much lighter. Marcus Song took a set of keys from his pocket and raised an eyebrow at me. Want to grab a bite? I smiled at him. Sure, just a secondi, need to deliver this meal. Marcus Song said okay, and stayed put waiting for me because I had run into an old acquaintance. I was in an exceptionally good mood today as I served Daniel Evans' meal. I couldn't help but smile to myself. You seem very happy today. Daniel Evans couldn't help but ask. May raised my hand to cover my face. Do I? Maybe I ran into an old classmate. Daniel Evans looked down and shoveled his food. What kind of old classmate makes you so happy to see? I smiled. He's a doctor. Actually, coincidentally, he works in the mental health department at the hospital and I've been feeling a bit off lately. So I thought I'd ask him about it. Daniel Evans gave me a scornful look. Oh, come on. You're a young woman in your early 20s. What kind of mental problems could you have? I nodded, then reached up and rubbed my aching neck. You're right. I hope there's nothing wrong. 8. They say doctors tend to be some particular about cleanliness. Sure enough, Marcus Song was just like that. If I hadn't run into Marcus Song, I probably would have just grabbed something quick somewhere for lunch, but Marcus Song, on the contrary, directly found an upscale restaurant. I teased him. Eating somewhere so fancy, are you trying to go broke? Marcus Song tapped my head lightly with his keychain. What is Miss Hayes accusing me of? Being cheap? I raised an eyebrow, playing along. How could I dare? Let's go. Let's eat. Upscale restaurants served dishes so quickly. Less than 10 minutes after we ordered, All the dishes were served as I lowered my head to cut my steak. I asked Marcus Song, Dr. Song, "Can I ask you something?" Marcus Song raised an eyebrow. "Why are you being so polite?" "Just ask." I pretended to be deep in thought. "Lately I've been getting headaches. And that's fine, but I often can't focus. I'll turn my head and forget what I was doing just for a second. You don't have anything serious, do I?" Marcus Song immediately sat up straight, putting down his knife and fork. "Have you been too tired lately?" Seeing him suddenly get serious, I quickly waved my hand, urging him to relax. "Actually, it's not just recently, it's been going on for a while. It's just become more noticeable lately, which makes me worry more." Marcus Song nodded. "It's good to be concerned. How about this? You come see me tomorrow and I'll take you for some tests, okay?" It was better to be cautious anyway. I agreed. First 9. Daniel Evans was practically living like a pampered young master at the hospital, waited on hand and foot. Once he had been comfortable enough for a while, I was actually looking forward to the look on his face when he received the surprise I had planned for him after his discharge. But I had just spoken with Marcus Song yesterday, and today I felt my condition had worsened. As I watched Daniel Evans eat, my vision blurred. By the time Daniel Evans called me, he had already finished his meal. Eleanor Hayes, noticing someone calling me, I came back to my senses. "WH, what's wrong?" Daniel Evans frowned and chided me. "What are you spacing out about? It's broad daylight. Are you daydreaming?" I shook my head, trying to clear my mind. "It's nothing. Are you finished eating?" "I'll clean up and then leave." Daniel Evans grunted and lay back down on the hospital bed to continue playing his game. I walked to the door, then suddenly turned back and glanced at him. Daniel Evans noticed and looked up at me. I frowned, said nothing, and left in the hallway. I asked the surrounding nurses where Marcus Song's office was step by step. I slowly found his office. Marcus Song was looking at something in his hand with a serious expression. I smiled and knocked on the door. "Dr. Song, do you have a moment?" Marcus Song looked up when he saw it was me. His stern expression instantly melted. "Of course. Come in and sit." I told Marcus Song what had just happened, and his expression didn't look good. My heart felt like it had been squeezed. "Marcus Song, am I really sick?" Marcus Song thought seriously for a moment, then asked me, "Have you been under a lot of stress lately?" Does Daniel Evans count? Because if so, I'm definitely under a lot of stress. But facing Marcus Song, I just sighed. Marcus Song kept encouraging me, "If something's bothering you, you can certainly tell me about it. Maybe I can help." I shook my head, still unwilling to say it's nothing major. "Really? Is my illness related to this?" Marcus Song nodded silently. "I am concerned it might be physical symptoms of stress." My mind instantly went blank, and my hands felt lost. Then what do I need to do?" Marcus Song gave me a relaxed smile. "Don't worry. I'll prescribe you some medication. We'll try to control it with medication first. If that doesn't work, later we'll think of other solutions, okay?" I nodded blankly. Marcus Song patted my head. "Don't be afraid. You'll be fine. Try to relax, okay?" I nodded obediently. Even after leaving Marcus Song's office, I was still in a daze. "Oh God, please don't be so unfair to me." 10. Daniel Evans was about to be discharged from the hospital. My visits to the hospital became less frequent, and Daniel Evans noticed, "Why haven't you been coming to the hospital often lately?" I was spacing out again and hadn't heard what he said. "Eleanor Hayes." I flinched, startled by him. "What's wrong?" I looked very tired. Daniel Evans scrutinized me. "Why have you been acting so strangely lately?" I shook my head, not planning to tell him about my condition, afraid he might accidentally laugh himself unconscious. At that moment, someone walked into the room. "Ellie." I looked up a little surprised. "Dr. Song." Daniel Evans's gaze flickered between Marcus Song and me. "You two know each other?" I nodded excitedly. "Keys, that doctor classmate I told you about last time." Daniel Evans nodded, looking half understanding, and looked at Marcus Song warily. "You're a doctor from the mental health department. What are you doing here?" "To see a patient from the orthopedics department." Marcus Song raised an eyebrow. "The human body is a large system. All parts of the body are connected. There's no such thing as isolated systems. You're about to be discharged. I'm checking if your car accident damaged any nerves, like your traumatic amnesia." When Marcus Song said the last few words, his tone became a little heavier, as if emphasizing something. Daniel Evans froze. Marcus Song then said to me, "Ellie, could you get me a glass of water?" I nodded and obediently went to the water dispenser, taking a paper cup to fill it. When I returned to the room's entrance, I heard Marcus Song and Daniel Evans talking. "What's your relationship with Ellie?" Daniel Evans's voice was disdainful. "What's it to you?" Marcus Song remained as composed as ever. "Elise sick. Do you know that, Daniel?" Evans didn't speak. I peeked from the doorway into the room. Daniel Evans' expression was complex. I couldn't quite tell what emotion it was. Marcus Song sighed and continued, "She's still in the early stages. I suspect it's a sign of depression because Ellie is already showing very clear physical symptoms of stress if the family doesn't take it seriously." Mental illnesses like this will be very difficult to treat. You should really think about it, Marcus Song said, closing the medical record book in his hand. I came back to my senses, carefully carrying the paper cup into the room. Dr. Song, here's your water. I handed the paper cup to Marcus Song. He smiled at me and bent down to meet my gaze. Drink it yourself. Your lips are so dry you didn't even notice. Marcus Song waved his hand at me and walked out of the room. I gave a silly laugh and drank the water myself, sitting beside Daniel Evans. I continued to pack my things. Suddenly his long fingers gripped my wrist. You are sick. I was a little surprised. How would he know? But I still chose to hide it. I shook my head. No, how could I be? What are you thinking? Daniel Evans probably didn't even realize how hard he was gripping. May winced in pain and cried out, Daniel Evans, that hurts. Daniel Evans, only then did he realize I'm sorry. I shook my head and smiled at him. It's okay. 11. Daniel Evans's memory returned on the day of his discharge. Daniel Evans suddenly said he remembered everything. That's wonderful. I couldn't help but wrap my arms around his waist and smiled happily. Daniel Evans pinched my cheek. His eyes held a tenderness I had never seen before. William Evans and Margaret Evans were overjoyed. William Evans patted Daniel Evans's shoulder. Daniel Evans, Ellie went through a lot of hardship caring for you during this time. You must treat her well from now on. Daniel Evans nodded frantically. Margaret Evans took my hand. Ellie, don't worry if that boy, Daniel Evans, ever dares to bully you in the future. I definitely won't go easy on him. I smiled. It felt so good, so happy. It felt as if time had stopped at that very moment. In the evening, Daniel Evans walked me home. The street lights cast long shadows of us. Ellie, when should we have the wedding? I hadn't expected Daniel Evans to bring it up himself. I was a little surprised and asked without hesitation, I thought you didn't want to marry me anymore. Daniel Evans's expression froze for a moment. Why would you think that? I shook. A vague memory, one that didn't feel like mine, suddenly appeared in my mind. I don't know, I just felt like you didn't really like me. Daniel Evans suddenly grabbed my hand and pressed it to his chest. Ellie, listen to me, only you are my bride, and I will only marry you. Ellie, I love you. Daniel Evans said it so solemnly, but it felt so strange. Why didn't I feel anything in my heart? Why wasn't my heart pounding as I expected? I remember I seemed to love him very, very much. I don't know when, but I spaced out. Again, Ellie, I came back to my senses. Daniel Evans looked a bit flustered. I looked around. What are we doing here? Daniel Evans gave me a forced smile. I'm walking you home. I nodded and walked a couple of steps forward on my own, then turned back in surprise and ran towards Daniel Evans. Daniel Evans, how did your leg get better? Daniel Evans's face darkened and he stared at me intently. I frowned. What's wrong? Aren't you happy? Daniel Evans shook his head. It's nothing. I'll walk you home. 12. Daniel Evans took me to his place, but inside there was a woman I had never seen before. He called her Chloe Miller. Chloe Miller. I racked my brain trying to remember that name. Fragmented memories floated into my mind, and I suddenly stood up from the couch and cried out. I remembered Daniel Evans's hand carefully protected me as if afraid I would fall. What's wrong? What did you remember? I looked at Daniel Evans, raising my voice regardless. You said you missed Chloe Miller, that you wanted Chloe Miller to be your bride, that you wanted to stay by Chloe Miller's side and take care of her for some reason. My body trembled and my hands were trembling, uncontrollably cold, so cold I hugged myself. Wanting to curl into a ball, Daniel Evans rushed forward and pulled me into a hug. Ellie, what's wrong with you? I couldn't speak, couldn't make a sound. I could only whimper. In Daniel Evans's arms, when Daniel Evans hugged me, I couldn't help but turn my head at that moment. I saw the woman again. She smiled at me. Her smile was terrifying. Her bright red lips looked like a gaping maw about to devour me, and her eyes unnaturally upturned. Glaring at me, I let out a scream and uncontrollably fainted. 13. When I opened my eyes, I was lying in a hospital room and Daniel Evans was leaning over my baby. Wiggled my fingers, which woke him up. He immediately leaned closer to me. Ellie, you're awake. Is there anything uncomfortable? Do you need me to call the doctor? Daniel Evans bombarded me with questions. It made my head spin. I shook my head, struggling to open my eyes after a couple of light coughs. I wanted to speak, but my throat was dry and my voice hoarse. Daniel Evans, why am I here? He shook his head, his eyes full of worry. It's nothing. You just have a little low blood sugar. You fainted earlier. That was true. I often skipped breakfast, so having low blood sugar was normal. Thinking about it this way, Daniel Evans really did care about me. I turned to him and smiled warmly. Now that you mention it, I am a bit hungry. Is there anything to eat? Daniel Evans nodded and patted my head. Wait here. I'll go downstairs and buy you something, Daniel Evans said. And then he left the room. No sooner had he left than Marcus Song arrived. He was holding a medical record book and came to my hospital bed to ask me questions. How are you feeling? I thought for a moment. I'm okay. Nothing feels uncomfortable. Daniel Evans was writing something on a piece of paper. the pen scratching against the paper with a soft H sound after he finished writing. He put the notebook away. I looked up at the 4 drip. My mind wandering, the clear liquid dripped down. Little by little I suddenly spoke, hinting at something. What's in there? Marcus Song followed my gaze, his eyes also landing on the 4 drip. Don't worry. It's just Celine. I nodded in understanding. Marcus Song didn't linger and left the room. Not long after, Daniel Evans returned. He was carrying many things, meticulously arranging one item after another on the table. Just like I used to do for him. I didn't know what you'd like, so I bought a little bit of everything. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Thank you. Daniel Evans playfully tapped my nose. Don't thank me, silly. I smiled as I ate the breakfast Daniel Evans had brought. Daniel Evans suddenly spoke. Ellie, I responded. Daniel Evans seemed to be hesitating about something. After a long exhale, he spoke as if he had made up his mind. When you're discharged, let's get married. I froze, my eyes lit up with surprise. Okay, 14 after being discharged. I stayed at Daniel Evans's place for a few days. My memories felt increasingly. I kept feeling like I had forgotten something. Sometimes I felt like I was asleep, but it wasn't until Daniel Evans came over that I realized my eyes had been open the whole time. Daniel Evans would occasionally jokingly tease me. What are you thinking about now? Do you have some brilliant new idea? Usually at these moments, I would become exceptionally clear-headed, but then I would become hazy and disoriented again. Sometimes I would feel inexplicably tired. My entire body would ache, as if I'd been in a fight, but in reality, I hadn't done anything. A little later on, I found myself often staring blankly at Daniel Evans' face. Daniel Evans would always ask me with a smile, but only I knew that in that instant he didn't recognize him. I didn't know who he was, although I would feel a bit scared. I didn't dare make any sudden moves. It just seemed like he wouldn't harm me. Usually in these situations, after a little while, I would remember Daniel Evans's name again, but deep down, I knew these episodes became more frequent and the periods of clarity lasted longer. But on the bright side, Daniel Evans and I were finally getting married on our wedding day. Daniel Evans gently guided me to the dressing room. He said, Ellie, please wait here patiently, okay? Soon a woman will come for you and take you somewhere. After that, you'll be able to stay with me forever, okay? I obediently nodded. Okay. The woman Daniel Evans mentioned was now holding various items and applying things to my face. It wasn't very comfortable, but I didn't dare say anything. Finally, it was over. I asked the woman if she could give me a piece of paper and a pen. She said yes and asked what I needed it for. I winked at her and said it was a secret, a surprise for Daniel Evans later. The woman said, okay. Suddenly, I felt terrible, crying and begging the woman to go find Daniel Evans. Having no choice, she had to comply. By the time Daniel Evans arrived, I was already gone. All that was left for Daniel Evans was a dry, stark note. Daniel Evans, I know you don't love me. You only love Chloe Miller. I can't marry you, and don't look for me. Without even looking closely, my tear stains were visible on the paper. Daniel Evans lost it. He held the note and screamed furiously, Ellie, Ellie, Ellie. That was the first time I'd ever seen Daniel Evans cry. It wasn't a pretty sight at all. Soon, Daniel Evans' cries attracted a large crowd. At the front of the group were William Evans and Margaret Evans. They each grabbed one of Daniel Evans's arms, asking him what was wrong. Daniel Evans' eyes were red. Ellie is gone. Ellie is gone. William Evans and Margaret Evans didn't understand. William Evans frowned. How could someone just disappear? She must still be in the house. Don't worry, maybe she just went to the restroom. Margaret Evans was also trying to calm Daniel Evans down. That's right, Daniel Evans, you're just too worked up, aren't you? Daniel Evans thrust the note in his hand upward. Ellie is gone. Ellie doesn't want me anymore. Shouting this, he stormed out of the dressing room, and the crowd followed close behind. When everyone had left, one person returned at the very end. It was a woman. She stopped beneath the ventilation shaft and gave a thumbs up towards it. I opened the panel and jumped down from above. I immediately hugged the woman. My bestie, what would I do without you? 15. I had trained in martial arts, and dance climbing into a ventilation shaft, for instance, was not difficult for me. It was my first time watching the show from a bird's eye view, and I wasn't quite used to it. When Daniel Evans cried, I almost burst out laughing. He should have known. Never underestimate a good-natured person, because you'll never know how terrifying the dark side of their heart can be. My best friend, Samantha Green, brushed the dust off. May go on. Marcus Song is waiting for you outside. I nodded, my gaze falling on the wedding dress. I couldn't help but reach out and touch it. What a shame. This wedding dress is quite beautiful. Samantha Green scoffed. That's easy with just a word from you. You could buy hundreds of them. I pursed my lips. True. Marcus Song had driven there. Seeing me walk out in all black, I stood out conspicuously. He humped his horn at me. Over here, he waved. As soon as I got in the car, he handed me a bottle of water. Tired from acting? Have some water. I chuckled. You really get me. Marcus Song looked at me meaningfully. Impressive acting. If you're not nominated for an Oscar this year, I'm not watching, I swallow, see the water in my mouth. Right back at you. Dr. Song Yuri, quite the actor yourself. 16 later. I heard that Daniel Evans searched for me everywhere, he never married. Waiting for me, but he would never know that I was the young heiress of that powerful corporate empire, Alainer Hayes.